never thought I'd see the day my own son looked me in the eye and told me I no longer belonged in the home I built with my bare hands. It happened fast, quiet, like he'd rehearsed it. One moment he was celebrating a $33 million deal, and the next, he was asking me to leave before I embarrassed him. I didn't argue. I just watched the child I raised turn into a stranger. Maybe you've lived through something like that too. I was standing at the stove when I heard the front door slam harder than it needed to. It rattled the old glass a little. That door has been there longer than Marcus has been alive. I was stirring a pot of collard greens, thinking about whether I'd overdone the vinegar, when his footsteps came down the hallway, quick and sharp, like he was still walking on some corporate carpet, instead of our beat-up hardwood. He stepped into the kitchen with his phone in his hand, suit jacket tossed over his arm, tie already loosened. "You didn't answer my texts," he said. I kept my eyes on the pot for one more breath. "My phone's in the bedroom," I told him. I heard it buzz, just didn't feel like running back there. "Dinner's almost done." He didn't even look at the stove. His eyes did a quick sweep around the room instead, like he was inspecting a property, not coming home. The same yellowed cabinets I painted myself 20 years ago. The same nick in the table from when he dropped his backpack in 3rd grade, and the buckle cut into the wood. "You know we've outgrown this place, right?" he said. Just looking at all this, he waved his hand like he was shooing away smoke. "Good evening to you too," I said. He sighed, set his phone on the table, and rolled his shoulders like he was carrying something heavy. "I'm serious, Dad. I had another meeting downtown today. They asked if I still live in East Point. I had to stand there and explain why I'm still here." That word, "still," stung a little. I turned the burner down and put a lid on the pot. "You're not still here," I said. "You sleep here. You live most of your life up there in Midtown." He smirked. "Yeah, and that's the problem." I pulled the cornbread out of the oven, set it on the counter, and started slicing it. Habit. Every Thursday I cooked the same kind of meal. His mama used to say, consistency keeps a house from falling apart. I guess even she underestimated what pride can do. "Problem for who?" I asked. He sat at the table, but didn't sit like someone ready to eat. He sat like someone ready to deliver a presentation. Back straight, jaw tight. "For the image, Dad. For how this all looks. You know we're in the middle of a Series A the size of a small city. People go on LinkedIn, they see my address, they Google East Point, they see old news articles. They don't see innovative tech leader. They see kid from the hood who never quite left." I laid the knife down a little harder than I meant to. "They see a man who worked his way up," I said. "Nothing wrong with that. That's not how this world works," he shot back. "Perception is everything." His voice had that tone he used in those interviews he sent me. The podcast clips where he was Marcus Thompson, founder and CEO, not the boy who used to crawl into bed with me when thunder shook the windows. I put the cornbread on a plate, set it on the table, and went back to the stove. "You hungry, or you just here to insult my address?" I asked. He rubbed a hand over his face, like he was trying to wipe off the day. "I'm just saying, we could have moved a long time ago. I could have put a down payment on something in a better neighborhood. But you insisted on staying here in this time capsule." He glanced at the calendar on the fridge, the magnet from my church, the faded picture of his mama tucked under it. "This time capsule is almost paid off," I said. "Roof doesn't leak. Lights come on when I flip a switch. Gas company still knows my name. That's enough for me. It's not enough for what I'm trying to do." He said it like a verdict. It hung there, heavier than the steam rising from the pot. We ate in mostly silence. I fixed his plate, same as always. More chicken than he needed, greens, cornbread, a little hot sauce on the side. He scrolled his phone between bites, thumb moving fast. "You know what Devon told me today?" he said, not looking up. "I don't know nobody named Devon," I said. "My lead investor. He told me if I want the board to take me seriously, my whole life needs to align with where I'm headed, not where it came from." I watched him chew, watched his eyes dart across the glowing screen. "And you heard that is smack your daddy's house?" I asked. He finally looked at me, really looked. There was a flicker of something like guilt. Then it hardened. "Don't twist my words, Dad. I'm trying to help both of us." Funny, I thought that's what I'd been doing the last 32 years. He pushed his plate back, half the food untouched. "That's not fair." "Maybe," I said, "but it's true." He leaned forward, fingers laced together on the table, like he was sitting in a conference room instead of my kitchen. "Look, we're about to close a $33 million deal. Do you understand what that means?" "I understand 33 million is more than we ever had," I said. "I also understand you still put your pants on one leg at a time." He exhaled sharply. "It means eyes on me, Dad. Media, partners, regulators, everybody. They're going to look at where I live, who I'm connected to, what my home situation is. It's all part of the package now." "And what exactly is wrong with your home situation?" The question came out quieter than I expected. I could feel the muscles in my jaw clenching. He hesitated, just a second too long. "It's complicated," he said. You're set in your ways. You don't like people coming over. You don't like the noise. You don't like the way we do things. It creates friction." I remembered the last time his team came over, the loud music, the shoes all over the floor, the empty beer bottles left on my front steps. I'd said something about respect. After that, they mostly met downtown. "You mean I asked grown folks to respect my house?" I said. "That's not friction, Marcus. That's manners." He shook his head. "It's not about manners. It's that you and we don't fit in the same picture anymore." That one landed like a body blow. I swallowed, reached for my glass of water, just to give my hands something to do. "You my son," I said. "That's the only picture I care about." He looked away, jaw working. "You know, there's this saying Devon likes. If you want to grow, you gotta cut dead weight. He says it all the time. And I've been thinking." He stopped there, didn't finish the thought. Didn't have to. I stared at the table. That scratch from his backpack seemed deeper than I remembered. "Dead weight, huh?" I said. "That what you think I am?" He shifted in his chair, uncomfortable. "That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm carrying a lot right now. This company, this deal, all these people depending on me. And I can't keep worrying about whether my dad's going to scare off investors because he doesn't like me coming home late. I don't care what time you come home," I said. "I care how you treat this house and the man under its roof." He looked at me like I was speaking another language. The gap between us felt wider than the table. The clock on the wall ticked a few times too loud. Somewhere down the street, a car stereo thumped bass for a second, then rolled on. He pushed his chair back. "I have to get back," he said. "We've got a late-night call with the lawyers. I wanted to put this on your radar." "Put what on my radar?" He stood, grabbed his phone, slipped it into his pocket. "Things are going to change after this deal closes, Dad. You should start thinking about what you want to do." "I was planning on finishing my dinner," I said. "Maybe watching the game." He frowned, frustrated. "You know that's not what I mean." "I know exactly what you mean." My voice surprised even me. It came out calm, flat, no heat, just a kind of tired. He opened his mouth like he was going to argue, then shut it. His eyes slid away from mine. For a second, I caught a glimpse of the 8-year-old who broke my favourite mug and tried to hide the pieces. Then it was gone, replaced by the polished founder who knew his elevator pitch better than he knew his father's favourite song. "We'll talk more after the signing," he said. He walked back down the hall, grabbed his jacket from the hook and headed for the door. "He forgot something," I called out. He turned. "What?" "Thank you would be nice, for the food, for the roof, for the 32 years. He stared at me like he was searching for the right file in his head and couldn't find it. "Thanks, Dad," he said finally. The words came out stiff, like they didn't quite fit in his mouth. The door closed behind him, this time softer. I listened to his car start, pull away, fade into the traffic on the main road. I sat there a minute, looking at his half-eaten plate, the cornbread cooling on the counter, the empty chair across from me. My hand found the back of that chair, fingers wrapping around the worn wood where his mama used to sit. I got up, carried his plate to the sink, scraped the food into the trash. The fork clinked against the dish louder than it should have. I rinsed it off, set it in the rack, wiped my hands on a towel that had been washed too many times. Then I walked out onto the front porch. The evening air sat heavy, warm the way Atlanta gets when the sun's almost gone, but the heat hasn't made up its mind to leave yet. Kids were shouting somewhere down the block. A dog barked twice. Someone's TV murmured through an open window. I leaned against the railing and watched a car idle at the stop sign for a long moment before it turned. My chest felt tight, not from anger exactly, not from sadness alone. More like something slow had started to shift inside me, just a fraction, like an old house settling on its foundation. I'd kept my mouth shut a long time in that kitchen, longer than I probably should have. Out here, with nobody listening, I realized that silence had started to sound different. Marcus stayed out the next morning. I heard the garage door open sometime before sunrise, then nothing but the soft thud of his shoes crossing the living room. He didn't say a thing. I didn't either. I was sitting at the table with my coffee, letting the heat settle into my hands. He moved through the house like someone trying not to wake a stranger. By the time I finished my cup, his bedroom door had already closed. I swept the porch, watered the plants, ran a load of laundry, anything to keep my mind busy. The house carried a different weight that day, like the walls were waiting for an argument that never came. When Marcus finally came downstairs again, he had a backpack slung over one shoulder and a look that said he didn't plan on staying long. "I'll be late," he muttered. "You were late last night too," I said. He paused only a second. "This is a big week, you know that." I nodded, though he wasn't looking at me anymore. His keys jingled, and the door shut before I could think of anything else to say. Around noon, 2 of his friends showed up. Young guys, voices loud, dressed like they'd just gotten out of a meeting they didn't want to be at.
They didn't knock, just walked in after a quick text, and I heard them at the doorway laughing about something.
Man, Marcus said his dad's giving him grief again, one of them said. Old folks don't get ambition. Another chimed in. Yeah, they hold you back because they're scared. They want you stuck with them. My jaw tightened. None of them saw me standing in the hallway. I stayed where I was, too tired to step out, too proud to hide. Marcus appeared from his room, and they greeted him like nothing was wrong. He didn't lower his voice. He just doesn't understand what's happening, he told them. He wants everything to stay the way it was. I caught the echo of that line, the one that had stuck under my ribs the night before. We don't fit the same picture anymore. They went outside, laughing as they got into their cars. The conversation played itself back inside my head long after the engines quieted down the street.
I walked to the kitchen and poured myself water, though I wasn't thirsty. The glass felt cold enough to steady me. Then the phone calls started. My sister rang first.
Marcus says you're giving him a hard time, she began. Something about you being stubborn. Then my cousin from Decatur. Heard you're not letting that boy grow, he told me. Let the man breathe. Each person repeated a different version of the same story, all traced back to Marcus. The words changed, but the picture stayed the same. Me as the obstacle, him as the victim of some outdated father who couldn't keep up. I didn't defend myself, didn't correct anything. Just listened, made a little noise of acknowledgement, and ended each call with, I hear you. After the third call, I stepped outside, sat on the top step of the porch, letting my elbows rest on my knees. Cars passed, kids played across the street. Life kept moving like my world hadn't taken a sharp turn overnight.
I rubbed my thumb along the seam of my jeans, trying to understand how fast a house could turn cold. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was Clarence. You at home? He asked. I am. Stay put, I'm on my way. He didn't wait for an answer. About 20 minutes later, his truck pulled up, paint chipped from too many summers under the Georgia heat. He climbed out, smoothing his shirt like he always did before he spoke to somebody he cared about. You look like you slept on a decision you didn't want to make, he said, stepping onto the porch. Didn't sleep much at all, I told him. He sat beside me without asking, one foot tapping lightly. I heard some things, he said. Folks talking, and you know I don't trust second-hand stories. So tell me what's really going on. I didn't explain everything, didn't need to. I gave him the outline, Marcus's remarks, the tone, the way he'd spoken to his friends. Clarence listened with his head tilted slightly, the way he did when he needed every word to land in the right spot. That boy's grown, he said eventually, and sometimes when people grow, they look back and forget who watered the soil. I sighed. I didn't think it'd turn like this. Nobody ever thinks it will, he said. That's how it sneaks up on you. One day you're raising a kid, next day he thinks he raised himself. He folded his hands, thumb rubbing the knuckle of his index finger in slow circles. Let me ask you something, he said. Did anybody call to ask if you were okay? I thought about it. No, but they called to scold you. Every one of them. Clarence nodded like he already knew the answer. That's how you know you're standing alone, not because they're against you, because they're silent where it matters and loud where it hurts. The truth of it settled into me like a slow ache. I leaned back against the porch post and watched a leaf tumble down the walkway. Marcus thinks he's doing what he needs to do, I said. He thinks success gives him a right to talk like that. Success don't give you rights, Clarence said. It exposes what you think you deserve. A car rolled past, music barely audible. My neighbour's dog barked once. I could feel the day shifting, sunlight softening as the afternoon stretched on. Clarence stood. Come by the cafe later, he told me. I'll make you something warm, help you clear your head. I nodded and watched him walk back to his truck. The engine hummed to life and he pulled away. I stayed on that porch for a while longer, listening to the steady rhythm of the neighbourhood. Eventually, I went back inside. The house felt smaller than usual, though nothing had changed. Same walls, same floor, same pictures. But the air was different. I walked to the sink, rinsed out the coffee mug from earlier, and set it upside down on the counter. The drain made a little gurgle as the water disappeared, the sound barely noticeable unless someone was really listening. I stayed there, hand on the edge of the counter, letting everything settle in the way dust does after someone shuts a door too hard. I was walking out of the hardware store the next afternoon when someone called my name. It was Harold Grant, an old colleague from my systems engineering days. We hadn't seen each other in at least a decade, but he still had that same uneven stride and that same way of squinting before he spoke, like the world hadn't earned full trust from him. Heard your boy's making big waves, he said, adjusting the strap of his bag. Folks been talking about him all over Buckhead. I smiled out of habit. He's doing well, I answered, working himself too hard, but that's nothing new. Harold nodded, but didn't step away. His mouth tightened, the way people's mouths do when they're not sure if they should keep quiet. Look, I don't want to stir anything, he said, but someone at a mixer last night mentioned your name, not kindly. My grip on the plastic bag shifted. A screwdriver rattled inside. What did they say? Harold hesitated. Something about you being extra weight, slowing Marcus down. A couple of them said he's trying to distance himself from family so investors don't think he's got baggage. That word again. Weight. Baggage. Something heavy that should have been cut loose long ago. Folks talk too much, I said, though it came out thinner than I meant it to. He studied my face for a moment. You all right? I'm fine. He didn't believe it, but he let it go, gave my shoulder a quick pat before heading for his truck. I sat in mine for a long moment before starting the engine. The steering wheel felt smaller somehow, like my hands didn't fit it the same way. I'd carried Marcus through so much. Doctor's visits, scraped knees, college applications, late-night anxieties about who he was supposed to be. Hearing my name tossed around like some anchor dragging him down left a mark. When I got home, I found Marcus in the living room with his laptop open. His fingers moved across the keys like he was trying to outrun something. We need to talk, I said, setting the bag down. He didn't look up. Not a good time. I'll keep it short. The tapping stopped, but he still didn't raise his head. Dad, I really can't. You've been telling people I'm holding you back. His shoulders stiffened. What are you talking about? Harold heard things. From your circle. He finally closed the laptop, slow and deliberate. His eyes were unreadable in a way I didn't recognize. I'd seen annoyance, frustration, even embarrassment from him before. But this was new, detached, like I wasn't someone he owed an explanation.
"I didn't tell anybody anything," he said. "People make assumptions. Assumptions come from somewhere." He sighed like the conversation itself was a chore. "Look, Dad, investors ask about family. They want to know if the founder's carrying responsibilities that might interfere with the business. It's standard." "And you tell them what?" He leaned back. "That I'm focused, independent, not tied down." "Not tied down? By your own father?" His jaw flexed. "That's not what I said, but it's what they heard." He gave me a look I'd never seen come from my own child, a mixture of irritation and calculation, like he was weighing what information I was worth. "You're overreacting," he said. "It's not that deep. This deal is huge. We can't afford mistakes, distractions, mixed signals." "I'm a distraction now." "Dad, you show up at the office without warning. You ask questions in front of people. You get upset when I miss dinner. I can't run a company and keep explaining myself." I took a breath, slow and steady. "So that's the story going around. That I don't understand your world. That I'm, what did they say? Baggage?" He stood abruptly. "I don't have time for this. I've got a meeting in 30 minutes. We'll talk later." He walked toward the door, grabbing his keys from the bowl. "One more thing," he said, stopping just long enough to add it. "I restricted access to a few accounts, just temporary, legal stuff with the merger. Don't worry about it." "Which accounts?" "Joint ones, and the house documents, and the insurance, just for now." I straightened but didn't move toward him. "You did all that without telling me?" "It's safer this way," he said. "Fewer hands in the pot." "Fewer hands? Marcus, that's my name on those papers." "We'll sort it out later. I really don't have time." He left before I could respond. The door clicked shut, clean and final. My heartbeat quickened, not from anger, but from clarity. Something had shifted. This wasn't a child pushing boundaries or a grown man asking for space. It was strategy, distance by design, a quiet reassignment of power. I walked to the drawer near the fridge, pulled it open, and sifted through envelopes, receipts, old warranty cards. Nothing unusual at first. Then I noticed a folder that used to hold property forms was half empty. I checked the mail stack on the counter. 2 of my financial statements were missing. I stepped into the living room, opened the small cabinet where I kept backup copies. 3 were gone. I felt a warmth rise in my chest, not heat, more like pressure. The kind that builds when a pipe's been leaking behind the wall for years, and suddenly the drywall softens. I didn't call him, didn't panic. I sat down at the table, turned on the old lamp, and started gathering whatever documents were left. My fingers worked steadily, pulling together bills, notices, tax records. Then I opened my laptop and forwarded myself screenshots of every message where Marcus had asked me for access, or brushed off my questions, or hinted at changes coming. Each click felt like adding another brick to a wall I should have built long ago. The sun had nearly set by the time I finished. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. A car alarm chirped somewhere down the block. I sat there, listening to those small sounds, letting them fill the quiet Marcus had left behind. My phone buzzed once, an email from my bank. Access attempt limited due to administrative change. I stared at the screen for a moment, then placed the phone face down on the table. The wood beneath my palm felt worn, familiar, steady. The house had always held us together, but something inside it had cracked. Not loud, not sudden, just deep. Marcus came home earlier than usual the next day. Not cheerful, not upset, just purposeful, like he'd rehearsed something on the drive over. He didn't even take off his shoes before heading straight for the dining table and spreading out a stack of papers as if he were preparing a contract signing. "Dad, I need your signature on these," he said. His voice was clipped, efficient. I dried my hands on a towel and walked over. "What's all this?" "Routine stuff. Financial housekeeping before the deal closes. Everybody on the team is updating their documents." He slid the top sheet toward me. I didn't reach for it right away. The language on the page didn't look routine. It looked permanent. "Transfer of primary ownership," I read quietly. He crossed his arms. "It's nothing, just simplifies things for legal. Keeps them from asking questions about who holds what." "Why do they need the house in your name?" His jaw tensed. "Investors want clarity, clean titles, no loose ends." I didn't realize I was a loose end. "Dad, come on." He tried smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. I picked up the paper and scanned a few more lines. Every part of it pointed the same direction. I'd be removed from the deed, and he would become sole owner of the place I'd paid off over 3 decades. "This isn't housekeeping," I said. "This is a transfer." "It's temporary." "Then why isn't there a clause saying it reverts back to me?" He glanced away for a moment, then tried again. "You're overthinking this. The lawyers said it's cleaner for now. When the dust settles, we can revisit it." He didn't talk to me first. Marcus tapped his fingers on the table, irritation building. "Dad, you always get hung up on process. I'm trying to handle things fast. We're in the final stretch. Sign it so we can move on." "I'm not signing anything without understanding it." His voice rose without warning. "You don't need to understand it. Just trust me for once." I set the page down. Not roughly, not gently. Just enough to make clear the conversation wasn't floating past me. "I do trust you, Marcus. But trust doesn't mean giving up my home." He stepped back, pacing a short line across the room. "Why do you make everything harder than it has to be? Because this isn't a light decision, and you know it." He stopped pacing and stared at me with a sharpness I hadn't seen in him. His voice dropped lower. "Do you have any idea what I'm carrying right now? 33 million on the line. If this goes sideways because someone thinks my situation looks messy, that's on me. And right now, you are the only variable I can't control." Variable? Something in me tightened at that word. "I'm trying to protect the deal, Dad. By pushing me out. By streamlining the process." I picked up the paper again, held it by the corner. "I'm not signing these today." The tension in his face hardened. "Why?" "Because I want time to read them, and I want my lawyer to read them too." He let out a dry laugh. "Your lawyer? Really?" "Yes, really." He pointed at the papers as if scolding a child. "You're stalling. You're sabotaging everything I've built." "I'm protecting everything I've built," I said. That hit him differently. His expression flickered between disbelief and anger. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "I bring home a deal that could change our lives, and you choose now to be stubborn? You think this house matters more than what I'm trying to do?" I didn't respond. I let the quiet say what needed to be said.
Just sign the damn papers. His voice bounced against the walls, louder than anything he'd thrown at me before. I took a slow breath. No. That one word didn't even sound like mine. It sounded older, steadier, like years of unspoken boundaries had finally found a voice. Marcus stepped closer, hands clenched. You're standing in the way of my future. You're blocking a $33 million contract because you want to cling to this old place. I can't believe this. You don't need to believe it. You just need to respect it. Respect? Dad, I'm asking you to help me. Why won't you? I am helping you, just not the way you want. He grabbed the papers off the table in one hostile sweep. I don't have time for this. Either you're with me or you're in my way. He stormed out the front door before I could form a reply. I cleaned up the table slowly, stacking the few loose sheets he'd left behind. My hands didn't shake, but they felt heavier than usual. Something had shifted, something that wouldn't shift back. Later that night, when I walked toward my bedroom, the door resisted. I tried the handle again. It didn't budge. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I checked the drawer where I kept spare keys. It was empty. A few steps down the hall, I noticed a small box of my belongings, old photos, a pair of shoes, my shaving kit, stacked neatly as if someone had tried to help me move. I sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on my knees, letting the room settle around me. Not angry, just aware. Whatever line Marcus crossed earlier that day, he had taken one more step over it. And the house didn't feel like ours anymore. The email came early the next morning. No name, no subject line, just a single attachment and the message that read, "You should see this." I almost deleted it. Spam hits my inbox all the time, but something in the phrasing made me pause. I opened the file, and the text popped up in a long thread of messages between Marcus and his young business partner, Devin. The first line froze me. Once we push Dad out, the deal will look cleaner. Investors love a founder with no baggage. Another message followed. He won't fight it. He's passive. Just keep pressure on him. I leaned back, letting the words settle in a way that didn't feel real. My own son calling me passive. Baggage. A variable to remove. My chest tightened. Not with anger, but something quieter, more familiar. Disappointment, layered over years of giving him space he never had to earn. I forwarded the email to a separate folder, the one I'd created quietly the night I saved the property forms. Then I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside. Clarence was already at the cafe when I arrived. He had wiped down the tables and set a mug in front of the chair he knew I always chose. I slid into the seat without a word. He studied my face and didn't bother with pleasantries. "What happened now?" he asked. I handed him my phone instead of answering. He scrolled slowly, brow tightening. "Someone on the inside sent this," he said after a moment. "Nobody outside the company would have access to these chats." "Why send it to me?" "Because some people can only stomach so much. Even the ones who like Marcus probably got tired of watching him step on you." He pushed the phone back gently. "You see what this means, right?" I nodded. The confirmation didn't make anything easier. "This ain't just disrespect," Clarence continued. "This is intent. They're planning around you like you're an obstacle, not a father, not a man who raised that boy." I rubbed the bridge of my nose. "I don't know what to do with this. You hold on to it, and you stop letting him write the story." I didn't answer right away. A couple of students came in for breakfast sandwiches. A delivery driver dropped off crates. Life went on for everybody else. My world felt like it was leaning to one side. By the afternoon, the rumours had already taken another turn. My niece called first.
"Uncle, Marcus says you've been interfering with his company's merger. What's going on?"
I told her nothing except that I was fine. Then my sister.
"He said you threatened to pull your support and cause legal trouble. That true?"
More calls, more messages, all the same tone. Concern wrapped in suspicion.
Marcus had clearly been working the phones, laying groundwork, shaping the narrative. The family group chat pinged non-stop until I muted it, and then came the email from his company's internal network, forwarded to me by someone else with no explanation. It was a memo written by Marcus himself. Reminder to the team: please avoid sharing confidential documents with individuals not cleared for the merger. Recent concerns have been raised about a family member interfering with company operations. Family member. Interfering. I read the memo twice. My stomach knotted, not from the accusation, but from how ordinary the sentence looked. Like it wasn't about me. Like I was already reduced to a cautionary tale, a footnote in a company newsletter. I walked around the block 3 times trying to shake the feeling. Every step felt heavier than the last. Cars passed. Dogs barked behind fences. Someone laughed on a front porch. I didn't feel connected to any of it. When I got back inside, I sat at the dining table and pulled out the papers Marcus had dropped a few days earlier. The ones he'd tried to convince me to sign. I placed my hand on top of them, feeling the weight of the stack. Safety or self-respect? 2 paths, one familiar, one frightening. The safer choice was the one I'd taken for years. Swallow the disrespect, avoid confrontation, hope he'd grow out of whatever phase had swallowed him whole. But the other option lingered, claiming what was mine, drawing a boundary, not for revenge, but for something steadier, agency, survival, a name that didn't bend under someone else's ambition. I opened my laptop. My fingers hovered above the keyboard for a moment before I typed out a few lines to myself, just to see the words on the screen. I'm not interfering. I'm protecting my life. Then I saved the sentence in the same folder as the screenshots. As the sun dipped lower, I went through the mail pile again. I sorted documents carefully, putting aside anything with my name on it. Mortgage history, insurance policies, tax returns. I scanned a few into my computer and copied them to a drive. The house creaked a little as I worked, old wood settling. Maybe it always sounded that way. Maybe I'd just stopped noticing. I didn't hear Marcus come home until he walked straight past the kitchen. His shoes tapped a short line on the hardwood. "You ate?" he asked without stopping. "Not yet. I'm grabbing something out. Don't wait up." He turned toward the front door, keys already in hand. No mention of the memo, no mention of the calls, no acknowledgement of the conversations he'd twisted. "Marcus," I said. He paused. "What?" I met his eyes. "Don't send anything else about me to your team." He blinked once. "I don't know what you're talking about." I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. I simply held his gaze until he broke it and stepped outside. After the door clicked behind him, I walked back to the table. The documents were still spread out. My laptop screen glowed faintly.
I reached for the folder of saved files and slid it closer, letting my hand rest there. The decision wasn't fully made yet, but something inside me had tilted. I wasn't stepping back anymore. I left the house early the next morning with the folder tucked inside my jacket. Marcus was still asleep, or pretending to be, and I didn't want another conversation where every sentence felt like walking barefoot through glass. I headed straight to the public library, claiming a quiet table near the reference section. The hum of old computers and the soft shuffle of pages made it easier to think. I laid out everything I had collected so far. Emails, copies of financial statements, screenshots of Marcus's messages, the anonymous conversation between him and Evan, and the handful of notes I'd written in the margins of envelopes when something troubling crossed my mind. It looked disorganized at first, like the life of a man scrambling to prove something nobody wanted to hear. But once I began arranging them by timeline, the picture sharpened. Marcus's behavior hadn't shifted suddenly. It had built itself layer by layer over the last year. His tone changed first, then his presence, then the subtle moves, closing accounts, adjusting permissions, excluding me from discussions he used to value. I had dismissed each moment as stress or ambition. Now, placed side by side, they formed a pattern. The merger wasn't just big, it was fragile, and Marcus had crafted an entire narrative that only worked if I didn't exist. I spent 3 hours sorting through documents. Facts steadied me more than emotions could. Logic held where love had frayed. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for clarity, for proof of what my instincts had been whispering. My silence wasn't protecting him anymore. It was enabling him. By midday, I needed air. Piedmont Park stretched out like an old friend. Wide green fields, joggers weaving between dogs on leashes, people lying on blankets pretending not to notice the world spinning faster than they could follow. I found a bench under a large oak, the kind that had seen more seasons than I had. I set the folder on my lap and flipped through the pages again. Every detail mattered now. The dates Marcus restricted accounts, the way he'd changed the deed paperwork, the wording in his internal company memo, even the timing of his angry outburst when I refused to sign those documents. I copied notes into a small spiral notebook, making sure each entry was short and sharp. A few drops of sweat gathered along my hairline. I wiped them away and leaned back. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel confused or cornered. The fear wasn't gone, but it had become something steadier, something I could shape. A message buzzed on my phone. "You're playing a dangerous game, old man." No number, no name, just the words. I read them twice. If the goal was to rattle me, it didn't succeed. Not fully. But it did confirm something. Someone knew I wasn't sitting still anymore. I closed the message without replying and tucked the phone into my pocket. A man walked past with a dog trotting beside him. A pair of teenagers boosted each other onto the low stone ledge near the path. Nothing felt threatening, but every movement seemed sharper now, like a new awareness had settled into my nerves. After another hour of cross-referencing documents, I headed toward the cafe near the park entrance. Clarence sometimes sat there after his morning rounds, and part of me hoped he'd be there today. When the bell over the door jingled as I stepped inside, the familiar scent of roasted beans cut through the haze of tension in my chest. The barista greeted me by name, but her smile faltered slightly, as if she'd heard something, maybe one of the rumors Marcus had planted. Even here, I could feel the ripple of suspicion following me. I ordered a black coffee and took a seat by the window. The street traffic rolled by in a steady rhythm. I pulled out the folder again and reviewed the timeline. A shadow fell across the table. I didn't look up immediately, thinking it was the barista with my drink. But the shadow didn't move. When I finally raised my eyes, a young man stood by the door outside, staring straight at me through the glass. He wasn't familiar, too sharp in the jaw, too clean in his expression. He didn't smile, didn't blink, just watched. The barista placed my drink on the table, breaking the moment. When I looked back out the window, the man was gone. My hand tightened around the cup. Not paranoia, awareness. I finished my coffee slowly, waiting to see if anyone followed me out. Nobody did, or nobody obvious. I took the long way back to my truck, staying on the more crowded paths. My phone buzzed again. Stop digging. No punctuation this time. No effort to hide the intent. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off the notifications entirely and headed for the Buckhead district. If someone wanted to scare me, they should have picked another man. Fear didn't push me away. It taught me where to look. I parked across from the glass tower where Marcus's company had its offices. I didn't plan to go inside. I didn't want to confront him. I only wanted to watch. To understand who moved in and out, who Marcus trusted, who he pretended to trust. Employees came and went. Delivery people signed in. A couple of board members I recognized from old photos walked inside, and several times I spotted Evan. Slick suit, phone pressed to his ear, eyes darting like he was trying to track invisible dust in the air. He was nervous. That told me I wasn't the only one feeling watched. I stayed until the sun dipped low enough to turn the windows golden. Then I headed home, making a stop at an office supply store on the way. I picked up a binder, coloured tabs, and a father stepping out of the shadows he'd lived in too long. Movement sounded outside the window, soft, close. I looked out just in time to see a figure stepping away from the porch as if retreating into the night. No face, no clear shape, just motion. Someone wanted to know what I was doing. I turned the blinds closed, locked the front door and checked the back door twice. Then I returned to the kitchen table. Not because I felt brave, because I felt ready. The binder sat open, waiting for the next piece of truth to fall into place. Marcus showed up after dinner, unannounced, pacing across the living room before I could even ask why he was there. His mouth worked faster than his breathing, the way it did when he'd already convinced himself he was right and everyone else needed to fall in line. "We need to talk outside," he said. "Whatever it is, say it here." His eyes darted toward the hallway as if the walls were listening. "Outside." I followed him onto the porch. The night felt heavy, not from weather, just from whatever he carried with him. He climbed down the steps, stood in the yard, and planted himself like he was drawing a boundary I hadn't agreed to. "Dad, you need to leave the house tonight." He said it fast, too fast, like a practiced speech. "Leave? For what reason?" "Because I'm not risking the deal. Not over this. Not over you being here." My hands tightened on the railing. "What does me living in my own home have to do with your business?" "Perception," he snapped. "Optics matter. People already whispered about you after your episodes." "What episodes?" "Don't make this difficult. I'm asking for clarity." He took a breath, but it didn't steady him. His foot tapped in the grass, restless. Investors need a clean story, he said. Not a 40-something executive still living with his aging father. They'll think I'm carrying dead weight. Dead weight. The words weren't new, just sharper now that he said them to my face. So, what are you asking? I said quietly. To stay somewhere else for a few days? No, I need you out. For good. Not as an argument, just facts. You need to move. Tonight. I stared at him, searching his expression for even a flicker of hesitation. Nothing. Not fear. Not guilt. Not love. Just urgency. You expect me to pack up my life in an hour? I've already moved some of your things. I thought it'd make it easier. My jaw clenched. I stepped back inside without another word. He followed behind me, still talking, still explaining the way people do when they know they're hurting someone, but insist the pain is inevitable. I got you a hotel for 2 nights, he said. You can figure the rest out after that. I walked past him to my bedroom. The door was unlocked now. Someone had removed the new lock he'd installed. A handful of my belongings sat in a storage bin on the floor. Clothes folded wrong, shoes tossed together, a framed picture of his mother facing down, as if the sight of her had embarrassed him. I moved slowly, picking out the essentials. A jacket, a few shirts, my notebook, the binder I'd built from weeks of quiet preparation. Marcus hovered behind me like a guard watching a stranger. I'm not doing this to hurt you, he said. I just need clean lines. This is bigger than both of us. He said that line a lot. Bigger than us. Bigger than family. Bigger than decency. I didn't answer. He kept talking anyway. Dad, please, don't make me the bad guy here. I zipped my bag. You asked for something impossible, I said, keeping my voice even. And I'm doing it anyway. That doesn't make you right. He didn't reply. He just stepped aside as I carried the bag to the door. The hallway felt smaller than usual, like the house was shrinking under the weight of what he'd become. Outside, the street lamps cast long shadows across the sidewalk. Marcus didn't hug me, didn't offer a hand, didn't even say goodbye. He stood in the doorway, arms folded, waiting for me to look back. I didn't. I walked. Each step felt like peeling off a layer of skin I wasn't ready to lose. The air grew colder, but something inside me settled, like I'd passed a point where regret couldn't follow. The bus stop at the corner was nearly empty. A man in a worn jacket slept against the shelter wall, his breathing loud and ragged. A teenager scrolled on her phone, barely aware of the world. I set my bag on the bench and sat down, my knees stiff from the long walk. My phone buzzed, a notification. Your access has been revoked. Another one. Your secondary account has been frozen due to administrative changes. Then a third. This one from my bank. Your balance is temporarily restricted, pending verification. Everything I relied on, my savings, my records, my financial security, gone in the space of seconds. A bus rumbled somewhere in the distance. The headlights painted streaks of light across the pavement. I leaned back, letting the cold metal of the bench calm the heat rising inside my chest. Marcus had predicted I would cling. so he'd made sure I had nothing to cling to. That was the part that stung. Not the loss itself, but the intention behind it. I opened the binder in my lap. The pages fluttered in the breeze. Evidence, timelines, notes, conversations. Proof of what had been done behind closed doors and polite smiles. Proof of what he was becoming. Proof of what I still had the power to confront. A voice in my head whispered the same question Clarence had asked days before. How much more are you willing to let him take? The bus pulled up. Its brakes sighed like it was tired of carrying everybody's burdens. I stood, slung the bag over my shoulder, and climbed aboard. The driver nodded, not asking questions. I settled into a seat near the back. My chest rose slowly, then fell. A few rows ahead, someone argued with a friend on speakerphone. A baby fussed. A young couple whispered about groceries. Life continued around me, unaware of the collapse happening in the space of a single night. As the bus pulled away, the street blurred outside the window. My reflection stared back, older, worn, steady. A man pushed out of his own home, but not broken. My hand rested on the binder beside me. Leasing the house hurt. Being cast out hurt more. But the moment my accounts froze, that moment made something inside me shift from hurt to resolve. Because that was the line. The one I hadn't recognized until I stepped over it. If I didn't act now, I wouldn't just lose the home I built. I'd lose the last piece of myself Marcus hadn't taken yet. The bus jolted over a bump in the road. I adjusted the strap of my bag and looked ahead. A long night waited for me, but so did clarity. And clarity is where a man starts taking his life back. A notification blinked on my phone while the bus was still rolling through Midtown. I didn't recognize the name, so I let it sit until I reached Clarence's cafe. He kept the place open late for people who worked odd hours, and the lights inside always felt steady, no matter what was falling apart outside. He waved me over when I walked in. "Sit wherever you need," he said. "You look like you've been carrying a building on your back." I didn't answer. My mind was still stuck on Marcus's voice telling me to leave. The weight of my frozen accounts. The quiet click of the front door shutting behind me as I stepped into the night. I set my bag on the chair, pulled out my binder, and finally checked that message. It came from someone at the Buckhead conglomerate. The same place that had asked me months ago to review Marcus's early projections. Someone I'd never met directly. "Saw the situation with your son. Thought you should have this." Attached was a confidential internal assessment, pages marked with timestamps from the last 2 weeks. I opened it, expecting another rumor or some vague red flag, something small. It wasn't small. The report listed 3 critical vulnerabilities in Marcus's company. The first 2 were concerning enough: weak compliance structures and unstable communication protocols. But the third one tightened my chest. Projected value of contract is inflated due to unverified productivity claims. I knew that phrase. I had raised it myself when they asked for my input earlier in the year. Marcus had insisted he'd fixed the issues. He'd even snapped at me when I'd asked too many questions. But the report showed he had ignored the warnings entirely. Pages of analysis filled the screen. Charts, bullet points, summaries. Every point circled back to the same problem. Marcus had built his pitch on numbers that didn't hold. And worse, he had doubled down instead of correcting course. I rubbed my thumb along the edge of the phone, taking in every line, every understated warning. Marcus had pushed me out of his house, but he couldn't hide from this. Clarence set a warm mug of tea on the table. "You're staring at that screen like it owes you money," he said. "It owes me clarity," I answered. "What did you find?" I handed him the phone. He read the report slowly, a soft whistle slipping out after a few paragraphs. "These aren't small errors," he said. "This is the kind of thing that sinks a deal outright." I told him about these 6 months ago. He brushed me off. And now? Now it's catching up. Clarence leaned back, folding his arms like he needed to hold something steady. "Someone inside their building wants you to see what your boy's been hiding. They didn't risk sending this for nothing." "They're not trying to help me," I said. "They're trying to protect themselves." "Doesn't matter. It helps you anyway." He wasn't wrong. I opened my binder and laid the new report next to the timeline I'd built. The holes filled themselves in. The freeze on my accounts, the pressure to move out, the desperate need for me to sign over the house. Marcus wasn't just afraid of looking dependent. He was afraid of the deal collapsing under its own weight. And he knew I was the only person who'd understand exactly why. A familiar ache moved through me. Not sadness this time, but something colder, more decisive. For months, I'd watched Marcus cut moral corners, push people aside, burn bridges he didn't think he'd ever need. Tonight, for the first time, I understood the full cost of his arrogance. He wasn't protecting a legacy. He was protecting a lie. I flipped through my notes. My handwriting grew sharper in later pages, each entry more deliberate. Phone calls he'd made, sudden changes in accounts, the anonymous threats, the names he'd dropped to family. Everything pointed to a man trying to outrun consequences he had created himself. "What are you thinking?" Clarence asked. "I'm thinking he doesn't know how close he is to losing the whole thing. Maybe he does. Maybe that's why he panicked and pushed you out. Maybe." He watched me for a long moment. "You're not planning to hurt him, are you?" "No," I said. "I'm planning to stop him from hurting me." Clarence nodded, satisfied with that answer. Customers drifted in and out. A few nodded at us. One asked Clarence for a refill. I watched the quiet bustle of the cafe while arranging documents into new categories. The binder filled with layers of truth, some painful, some clarifying, all necessary. By the time the clock above the counter inched past 10, the last missing piece clicked into place. I suddenly knew exactly what Marcus feared most, and exactly how he would try to hide it. Evan wasn't the threat. The investors weren't the threat. The compliance issues weren't the threat. The threat was that Marcus would rather ruin me, my home, my name, my finances, than admit he'd built his empire on sand. I closed the binder gently. Clarence slid a plate of cornbread in front of me, like he sensed I needed something to ground me. "You ready for whatever comes next?" he asked. "Ready enough." He didn't press for details. Good friends rarely do. They just stay close while you arrange the truth into something that finally makes sense. I gathered everything, stacked it neatly, and zipped the binder into my bag. The weight of it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt earned. Outside, the evening air settled around me. A car passed. Someone locked up their bike. A couple argued quietly near the crosswalk. Life pressed forward, ordinary and unbothered. I stepped off the curb, feeling the documents shift inside my bag, each page a reminder of what I'd spent a lifetime building, and what I wasn't willing to lose.
The night didn't answer any of my questions, but it didn't need to. I already knew exactly where I was headed next. The elevator doors opened onto the 21st floor, and the carpet swallowed the sound of my steps as I walked toward the conference room. A woman at the reception desk nodded after checking my name against the list, then motioned me toward a glass door etched with the company's logo. My palms felt steady. My breath held a slow rhythm. Preparation has a way of calming a man. Inside, the board sat in a long arc. 11 people, each carrying the practiced neutrality of executives accustomed to high stakes. One of them, a senior director I'd briefed months ago, gave a subtle nod that told me he remembered exactly who I was and why I was there. I took my seat at the far end of the table. My binder rested in front of me. The door behind me opened. Footsteps, quick and uneven. Marcus stepped into the room. He stopped so abruptly, the person walking behind him bumped his shoulder. His eyes locked on me. Shock, confusion, fear, and something darker rushed through his expression. His hand tightened around the folder he carried. He looked like a man realizing a fire he'd been pretending to control had now trapped him. "Dad? What are you doing here?" His voice cracked at the edges. I didn't answer. This wasn't the place for father-to-son explanations. The board wasn't here for sentiment. The chairman adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Lawson, please take your seat. We have several matters to review regarding your merger documentation." Marcus walked slowly, almost mechanically, to the opposite end of the table. His chair scraped slightly as he pulled it back. He sat, still staring at me like he needed the room to make sense of itself again. "This wasn't on the schedule," he muttered. "No, it wasn't," the chairman replied. "Circumstances changed." Marcus swallowed hard. "You should have told me he'd be here." The chairman leaned forward. "Mr. Lawson, your father isn't here as an observer. He's here because he is the independent consultant who performed the primary risk assessment for your merger proposal." The silence that followed was the kind that bends a man's spine. Marcus blinked several times, as if trying to process the sentence piece by piece. What? "We contracted his services earlier this year," the chairman replied. "His report was instrumental in our preliminary evaluation." The muscles in Marcus's jaw twitched. Something in him broke open, and the anger he'd been holding back flooded his voice. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded. I didn't move. The chairman answered instead. "Because you never asked who the consultant was, and we don't disclose identities unless necessary. Today, it is necessary." Marcus leaned back, disbelief turning into something sharper. "This is ridiculous." He doesn't know anything about our current status. He's not involved. He's biased. The chairman tapped a folder. "We received internal concerns regarding misrepresented data. Mr. Lawson, this meeting is to understand whether your documentation holds up under scrutiny. Your father is here to verify technical points only." Marcus glared at me. "This is what you wanted, isn't it? To humiliate me?" I opened the binder. My voice stayed calm. "I'm here to present the facts. What you feel about them is your choice." The chairman gestured for me to begin. I slid the first set of documents forward. "The projected productivity claims used in the final investor pitch are unsupported by your company's last 3 quarterly audits," I said.
These numbers are inflated by at least 28%. One board member adjusted his tie, another took notes. Marcus shook his head rapidly. Those projections are accurate. We adjusted methodology. Without documenting it, I replied.
Without updating compliance files, and without notifying your accounting consultant.
He scoffed. You're twisting this. I ignored the interruption and continued. Additionally, your communication protocol updates were never implemented. The system logs show repeated failures during peak hours, contradicting the report you submitted. That's temporary, Marcus argued. A glitch. A recurring glitch for 7 consecutive weeks, according to server data. His breathing quickened. You don't know how this industry works. You're taking pieces and turning them into something they're not. I'm presenting your own records, I said. If they're incomplete, that's something you should address. He slammed his hand on the table. You're doing this on purpose. You've been undermining me from the moment you learned about the deal. The chairman raised a hand. Mr. Lawson, control yourself. He hates that I'm successful, Marcus spat. That's what this is.
He's always been threatened by what I'm building.
I finally looked directly at him. You asked me to leave my own home. You froze my accounts. You took my name off documents I've held for 30 years. If you think I'm here out of jealousy, you haven't been paying attention to anything but yourself. A murmur traveled through the room. Marcus's face twisted, offense, shame, fury struggling for dominance. You don't belong in this room, he hissed. I belong anywhere the truth is needed. He opened his folder and shoved a stack of papers toward the board. This is a waste of time. These are the updated projections. This is what matters. Not his emotional vendetta. The chairman glanced through the stack for about 10 seconds before setting it aside. These are copies of outdated documents, he said, and several pages are missing signatures. Marcus's face drained of color. No, they're not. That's the updated file. I triple-checked.
Then you submitted inaccurate materials, the chairman replied coolly.
That is precisely why we initiated this review. Marcus's voice slipped into panic. Look, I can fix this. I just need more time. This isn't fair. I wasn't told any of this was happening. The chairman folded his hands. Mr. Lawson, your company's inconsistencies have reached a level that warrants immediate oversight. Effective today, we are pausing your role in the merger and opening an internal investigation into your documentation practices. Marcus's eyes widened, mouth parting as if the air had been pulled from him. You're suspending me? Temporarily. He turned toward me, searching for something. Mercy, maybe, or a crack in my resolve. Dad, don't let them do this. Tell them you didn't mean it like that. Tell them I'm capable. I closed my binder. Marcus, I didn't do anything. These are your choices, your numbers, your signatures, your omissions. You built this, not me. He stared at me as if the room were dissolving around him. You could fix this, he whispered. You could vouch for me. I won't lie for you. He recoiled like I'd struck him. The chairman stood. Meeting adjourned. Mr. Lawson, we will contact you regarding the next steps. Chairs shifted, papers gathered. People filed out slowly. A few offered me polite nods as they passed. Marcus remained seated, stunned, hands curled into fists on the table. I rose from my chair. The weight of everything. Months of silence, weeks of deceit, a lifetime of sacrifice, settled into a single, steady breath. I didn't look back as I left the room. The morning after the boardroom meeting, I found myself standing outside a lawyer's office with the same folder I had carried for weeks. The building wasn't impressive, just a squat brick structure wedged between a tax prep place and a vape shop. But walking through its door felt like stepping into a new version of my own life.
Attorney Mills listened without interrupting, her pen gliding across yellow paper as she shaped my story into something legal, structured, undeniable. When I handed her the binder, she flipped through it with a look that mixed approval and quiet surprise. "You've gathered more than most clients do in a year," she said. "I had time," I answered. She made a soft sound of acknowledgement. "We'll begin by restoring your accounts," she said. "Then we'll file to freeze any further changes Marcus made to shared property. After that, we'll separate your estate from his completely." Her voice was steady, matter of fact. Not warm, not cold, just the tone of someone guiding a man out of a burning building. By noon, the paperwork was filed. By evening, my accounts reopened. Marcus's name vanished from everything that once connected us. Insurance, the spare title, even the emergency contacts on my medical file. One form after another, I removed the strings he'd tied himself to, not out of anger, out of necessity. When the day ended, the only thing left to do was move. Clarence showed up with his truck, the same one rusting along the sides, the tailgate held by stubborn determination more than metal. He didn't ask what happened in that boardroom. He simply nodded when I carried out a box, then held the back door open for the next one. "You travelling light?" he said, after placing my last bag in the truck bed. "Heavy living doesn't suit me anymore." We drove in comfortable silence to the apartment I'd rented near the park. A second-floor walk-up, modest but clean. The landlord had given me the keys earlier that day. No memories lingered inside those walls. No echoes. Just space. Space to breathe. We unloaded everything quickly. The rooms felt bare, but not empty. Like a blank page instead of a hollow one. "You want help unpacking?" Clarence asked. "No, I've got it." He lingered a moment. "You did right," he finally said. "Not easy, but right." I placed my hand on his shoulder. "Thank you for every step you walked beside me." He squeezed my arm once and headed out. His truck rumbled down the street, leaving me alone in the quiet of my new place. I didn't sit down. I carried the box with my clothes into the bedroom, set it on the floor, and started hanging shirts one by one. The simple rhythm steadied me more than any deep breath could. A pot went into a cabinet, a book onto a shelf. My toothbrush found a new holder. Life reassembled in small motions. My phone buzzed late in the evening. A message from someone at Marcus's company. "He's been removed from his role. The merger is dead. He's on leave until further notice." No explanation, no commentary. A few minutes later, another message came from a number I didn't recognize. "He's blaming you. He said you sabotaged him." I set the phone face down on the counter, let the screen go dark. Blame has never changed a truth. Marcus had built his downfall the same way he built his empire. Quickly, confidently, without checking the foundation. Now he was learning what the world feels like when nobody else holds up the weight for him. Some lessons arrive softly, others arrive like gravity.
It wasn't my job to sort through the rubble he made. The next morning, sunlight slipped between the blinds. I stood in the doorway of my new kitchen, carrying a carton of eggs in one hand and the smallest frying pan I owned in the other. The stove clicked twice before the flame caught. The sound wasn't dramatic, but it carried something I hadn't felt in a long time. Ownership of my day, my choices, my space. I cracked an egg into the pan and watched it settle. Outside, the jogger passed by. A dog barked somewhere down the block. A neighbour hummed a tune through the thin hallway wall. Nothing extraordinary, but everything felt honest. I cleaned my small table, set down a plate, and sat with my breakfast.
The chair didn't wobble. The air didn't feel tight.
The silence wasn't painful. It was permission. Permission to exist without defending myself. Permission to stop shrinking inside my own life. A soft knock sounded at the door. A delivery driver stood in the hallway with a small package. Something Amazon-sized. I signed for it without thinking much about what I'd ordered. Inside was a simple wooden picture frame. I didn't remember choosing it, but there it was. Warm brown, smooth edges. On impulse, I opened a box I'd carried from the old house and pulled out a single photo. Marcus, at age 12, leaning against me, smiling like the world hadn't taught him hardness yet. I looked at the picture for a long moment. Then I placed it gently inside the frame and set it on the shelf. Not at the center, not at the edge, just a place where it belonged, but no longer ruled the room. After that, I walked to the front door, closed it, turned the lock.
The apartment settled into its quiet again. Not the quiet of being erased, but the quiet of finally being free.